My name is Juliet. I'm 47. In 2002, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin lymphoma. I had a series of chemotherapy and radiotherapy cycles, and after several remission and relapse cycles, I had a stem cell transplant in 2007. So I've now been in remission for 11 years. I was 31 when I was first diagnosed, and really quite early on, before I had any chemotherapy or any treatment at all, and in fact before I'd really I think properly processed the diagnosis, I had a conversation with my initial doctor, I think, about whether or not I wanted to harvest eggs. And that was really how the subject of fertility was introduced to me at that point. And it was the first conversation about it was, really, it's likely that you'll have a lot of treatment that could impact your fertility, and so you might want to think about egg harvesting. And my husband and I had a conversation about that, about the prospect of harvesting eggs before treatment. And it felt at the time like the biggest thing we were dealing with was my Hodgkin diagnosis, and that trying to think about a point after that and what might happen or might not happen, and think about if we did harvest eggs, what then would be the process at the end of that, just made us feel as though, I suppose, a little bit like it was a step too far, really, too much for us to think about. And so we declined at that point to have eggs harvested. When I was first diagnosed, I had a daughter who was a little over 18 months. And when we had the option to harvest eggs, and increasingly as we saw the impact of having an unwell parent on our daughter, we felt quite comfortable with the decision that we had made initially not to have eggs harvested. I think that when you are in the middle of a diagnosis, when you're the person in the middle of an illness and having treatment and everything, it can sometimes feel like a huge whirlwind is happening around you and you're kind of in the middle of it, and it can be really difficult to put things to the back of your mind, because you sort of have space to think about them because everything is happening around you. But the really important thing, I think, when you're diagnosed with a serious illness is to focus on the things that the decisions you can make and the things you can control. And I talked to a lot of people. I talked to my husband, I talked to my parents and my siblings and my friends, and I made decisions about the future based on what I was able to talk about with them. So I would say, talk to people. Don't be frightened to talk about anything to people, because all the people around you are part of that whirlwind, and they all want to do something, and they all want to be able to help, but they don't really know how to. So if one of the ways they can help is by talking through with you and helping you to think about the future and think about the decisions you're making now, and the decisions you're making now that are best for you, as well as the things that might be better for other people in the future, then draw on that, draw on the support that you have from friends and family and partners and so on. And think about yourself. It's a really odd thing to say, particularly when you're talking about parenting and motherhood and all of that kind of thing, but think first about yourself, because you have, a lot to do to cope with, and you'll need your strength to do that. My illness came and went over 5 years before the stem cell transplant, and I think as our daughter got older and the impact on her became more obvious, as she became more aware of the illness and the side effects and the treatment and so on, we realised that even if having another child had been possible at that stage, we wouldn't have wanted to try. I had to push quite hard to have tests to confirm that I'd had the menopause. Actually, I went through a phase where it worried me quite a lot in case I accidentally became pregnant again, because my husband and I had talked about it quite a lot, actually, and decided that what we definitely didn't want to do was have a child while I was, another child while I was ill, or while there was a chance I could relapse again. We had talked a lot about the future. We talked a lot about our daughter in the future if I wasn't around, and we didn't want to have another child when there was a chance of me not being around to raise it. And so there was a sense of, good, okay, that those conversations don't happen anymore. I have had the menopause, that's all sorted. And it wasn't until then, actually, it was at that point when I was no longer having periods, when I was absolutely certain that the menopause had happened for me, that I suddenly felt overwhelmingly sad, and as though I had lost something really fundamental, actually. And it's daft, really, because we hadn't even decided that we wanted more children, but the fact that the decision had been taken away from me at that point was I felt a loss, I felt a sadness. There was something in me at the time, although looking back on it, I think I was wrong, where I felt like I had become less of a woman, that because I couldn't any longer have children, there was something missing that was quite fundamental to who I should have been. And yeah, there was a period during which I felt really like there was a loss, like I had lost an opportunity, and it was sad. I would say if you're young or younger and going through the menopause, people may feel uncomfortable that you've got menopausal symptoms, and they may feel uncomfortable and not quite know what to say about you being younger and not being able to have children. But actually, if you're straightforward about it, and if people ask about it, and sometimes people do, if you can be straightforward and honest, then most of the kind of there isn't. I didn't experience a huge amount of judgment, merely curiosity, and people actually are concerned about how you are and how you're feeling, and in my experience, will take more care of you, not less.